Hanyu respectfully sat down behind him. Fang Liang did not say much, but the new sage Tianzhan was especially curious about Hanyu. Heavenly Venerate Wufa snorted. You didn't mention fellow Taoist Han's name? Ji Xianshan said, our heavenly race has many geniuses. We can accept this battle. Tianzhan nodded with a proud expression. Fang Liang reminded, it's better to be safe than sorry. It's best to send the strongest pseudo-sage. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du revealed a rare smile and said, we have countless geniuses. I really can't say who is the number one in the world. Tianzhan said, send my disciple. He fought 10 pseudo-sages of the Calamity race alone and was not at a disadvantage. He's the number one prodigy of the heavenly race. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du glanced at Ji Xianshan, who nodded. Ji Xianshan hesitated for a moment and said, we won't lose this battle. Tianzhan will lose his sage position if we do. Tianzhan was moved and his eyes became firm. After returning, he still had to teach his disciples and prepare some methods. He couldn't afford to lose. Hanyu sat behind Fang Liang and listened to the sage's conversation. He was secretly shocked. From the looks of it, sages were not on the same level. There were also differences among sages. A new sage could be demoted just like that. The ancestor was at least on the same level as Heavenly Venerate Xian Du, right? Hanyu thought silently. He knew that Hanju was very strong, but the one in charge of the Heavenly Tao was Heavenly Venerate Xian Du. Some people even joked that Heavenly Venerate Xian Du was the leader, and the Divine Might Heavenly Sage was the Heavenly Tao's faith. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du was in charge of managing the Heavenly Tao, while the Divine Might Heavenly Sage was in charge of intimidating the chaos. This matter is settled. We must take down the chaotic sea of fire. It concerns the future of the Heavenly Tao for billions of years. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said softly, by the way, the next new sage has been decided. It's the person behind fellow Taoist Fang, the personal disciple of the former Heavenly Tao sage Li Daokong, the master of Buzhou Divine Mountain. Heavenly Venerate Wufa, Pan Xin, Fang Liang, and Ji Xianshan nodded. It was not strange. Tianzhan was enlightened. So that was the case. This person's identity was so great. No wonder he could enter the sage realm early. Hanyu hurriedly bowed. He didn't expect this matter to be settled so quickly. There was not even a formality. Then, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du waved his sleeve and the sages left, leaving Hanyu in the hall. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du looked at him and smiled. You look really similar to fellow Taoist Han. Speaking of which, you taught Qinling, right? This child is impressive. He will be the Heavenly Tao's guardian in the future. Hanyu said, it's all thanks to the sages that my grand disciple can have today's creation. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du asked, do you think all of this is hypocritical and even sinful? Hanyu was stunned and remained silent. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said, I saw a hint of disdain in your eyes earlier. Do you think that sages are numb and heartless because of Qinling and treat all things in the world as pawns? Hanyu was still silent. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said, so what if it's a shocking lie? This lie will indeed attract innocent living beings to die. However, this loss is nothing in the calamity before the Heavenly Tao. There is no absolute peace. If the sages did not open the chaotic heavenly road, all living beings will be attacked by the inauspicious evil when they head to the dark forbidden zone. The Heavenly Tao is so closed off, but the number of living beings has reached the limit. They even have to snatch spirit chi to breathe. What kind of scene is that? Hanyu was moved. He was not a pedantic person. He also understood the overall situation of the sages, but he was a little unhappy that they were deceiving all living beings. Kind lies were also lies, especially to those who believed them and died. This was a sin. Hanyu was deep in thought. After a long while, he bowed to Heavenly Venerate Xiandu and said, "Thank you for your guidance, sage." Heavenly Venerate Xiandu said, "It's fine. I'll preach the Tao for you and increase your cultivation. You're still short of the sage position." Han Yu was ashamed and could only nod. In the blink of an eye, Han Ju entered seclusion for another 50,000 years. He opened his eyes and stretched. Only after 50,000 years could he feel the improvement in his cultivation. He really wanted to enter seclusion and break through in one go. It might appear to be a dream once he ignored everything. Unfortunately, he still cared about his disciples. He opened the emails. Your grand disciple Chpter transformed into billions of Dharma idols and walked in the chaotic spacetime. Your good friend Jiangyi has absorbed the power of the chaotic sun star and his cultivation has increased. Your good friend Evil Heavenly Emperor was attacked by your good friend Divine Robe Daoist. Your good friend Di Jiang was attacked by your good friend Divine Robe Daoist. Your good friend Niwa. Your good friend Huang Zuntian was cursed by a mysterious curse. Your good friend Ancestor Shitian has received guidance from your good friend Dao Ancestor. His cultivation has increased. Why was the Divine Robe Daoist fighting with the evil Heavenly Emperor and the great Dao sages in the deity realm of the ruins of End? Fortunately, he was not severely injured. It was probably a small fight. Han Ju noticed that Ancestor Shitian had established a connection with the Dao Ancestor. The Dao Ancestor had revived? No! It was probably still his will. Speaking of which, the Dao Ancestor and Pangu were really mysterious. They looked like they had died, but they would cause trouble from time to time. Han Ju continued reading. The Devil Ancestor should have been well-behaved recently. Han Tuo and Yi Tian had been cultivating in seclusion, and so had the Life faction. Chaotic peace was good. Everyone cultivated in peace. When I'm invincible, if you cause trouble again, give me a stage and a chance. Han Ju thought to himself. Although he was already a great Dao sage, he rarely interacted with others. He had developed a scheming personality. Only then did he not find cultivation boring. He looked forward to the content of the emails every time his seclusion ended. After reading the emails, Han Ju looked at the immortal world. Qinling had already broken the seal. He did not immediately take revenge but cultivated in seclusion in the Divine Palace. The immeasurable calamity would officially begin after Qinling became a pseudo-sage. Too early. Han Ju thought of the 10,000 Divine Authority generals. He didn't know where they were now. They hadn't appeared in his emails yet. Detected that the Strength Fiend Celestial has been successfully nurtured and is about to stir up the chaos. You have the following choices. New SD Rise at Nvel Bin. Co. 1. Exit seclusion immediately and kill the Strength Fiend Celestial. You can obtain a Great Tao Fragment and a Creation Spirit Stone. 2. Cultivate in a low-profile manner and do not participate in the conflict. You can obtain a Great Tao Fragment and a Creation Spirit Stone. The Strength Fiend Celestial should be Pango. He had already confirmed that Pango had reincarnated. Han Ju was afraid of provoking him and had never created the Strength Fiend Celestial. Was Pango finally going to appear after so many years? Seeing that the rewards were the same, Han Ju didn't hesitate and directly chose the second option. He took out the Creation Spirit Stone and fused it with a ball of Fiend Celestial Chi in the primordial world. Han Ju looked up into the depths of the chaos and began to search for the Strength Fiend Celestial's aura. After a long while, he finally felt a very powerful chaotic Fiend Celestial aura. This aura was especially different from ordinary living beings. It was filled with ruthlessness and caused one to feel danger. However, he couldn't see the Strength Fiend Celestial's existence. It should be hiding in a special space-time dimension. Hanju retracted his gaze. An hour later, he opened his eyes again. He felt inexplicably horrified, as if his natural enemy had appeared. This feeling was very subtle but also very accurate. It could directly tell him the reason. If he was already like this, the other chaotic fiend celestials should feel it even more deeply. I'm a primordial fiend celestial. Why do I feel it, too? Hanju was surprised. Could it be that the primordial fiend celestial and the chaotic fiend celestial were really related by the evolution chain? Forget it, it's none of my business. Hanju closed his eyes again and continued cultivating. In the dark space, boundless mist spread. At the edge of the lake, Han Tuo and Yi Tian meditated and cultivated quietly. They suddenly opened their eyes at the same time. A terrifying aura erupted from their bodies and their faces became sinister. Indescribable anger erupted from their hearts like a volcano erupting. Their auras surged until their long hair fluttered like dragons and snakes. The two of them gasped and glared ahead. After a long time, the uncontrollable anger dissipated. Yi Tian turned to look at Han Tuo and asked, "What did you feel just now?" Yi Tian snorted. "That's right. Unfortunately, we're not strong enough. We're not even qualified." He did not say anything, but Han Tuo understood. At this moment, a ball of demonic chi appeared behind the two of them and transformed into the devil ancestor Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan said, "Do you feel it?" The two of them turned around and nodded. Lu Yuan said, "Pango's reincarnation. The previous battle of the Fiend Celestials is about to begin again." Han Tuo frowned and asked, "Great Dao immeasurable calamity?" "In other words, you will be his target." "Me too." Han Tuo and Yi Tian frowned. Lu Yuan said faintly, "Even the 3,000 chaotic Fiend Celestials are not Pango's match. There are less than 100 now. Pango will be invincible." Han Tuo asked, "Aren't the Great Dao Divine Spirits going to do anything?" Lu Yuan said, "They won't. If they did, Pango wouldn't be so world-shattering. It might be the leader of the gods." "Who is the leader of the gods?" "Unspeakable name." Han Tuo and Yi Tian were silent. Han Tuo frowned. "Be it Pango or the primordial fiend celestial, the chaos will still face the winner among them. Could it be that the Great Dao Divine Spirits expect them to both be injured? An existence like them can recover instantly even if they are severely injured. Can't the Great Dao Divine Spirits think of this?" Lu Yuan said, "If we guessed this, there wouldn't be the current situation." With that, the devil ancestor dissipated. Yi Tian scratched his head. "Who cares? In any case, we just have to think of a way to kill Pango. That fellow has just been successfully nurtured. Could it be that he has invincible strength the moment he is born?" Han Tuo took a deep breath and did not reply. Hanju, who was cultivating, heard the Grand Primordium Fiend Celestial's voice. It was probably about Pango. Hanju created a clone and continued cultivating. He had to enter seclusion for at least 50,000 years. Besides, he was not a true chaotic fiend celestial. What did killing a chaotic fiend celestial have to do with him? 1,000 years later, in the Grand Primordium domain, the fiend celestials gathered in the hall. Hanju's clone noticed that there were more new faces and fewer old faces. The foolish sword sage and red fate were on his left and right, 10,000 feet apart. The atmosphere in the hall was tense. The good-natured fiend celestials of the ancient sects did not say a word. Pango's name was definitely a nightmare for the chaotic fiend celestials, especially for the ancient fiend celestials. The Grand Primordium Fiend Celestial had a headache. Previously, it was still preparing to deal with the Dark Forbidden Lord. It did not expect Pango to appear at this moment. Somehow, he felt that he was being targeted. A hand was approaching him. Pango has just been born. What's there to be afraid of? As long as we don't give him time, we can kill him as soon as possible. The foolish sword sage suddenly said with a disdainful tone. He despised the chaotic fiend celestials present. Visit novel bin. CM for updates. They didn't have the arrogance of a chaotic fiend celestial at all. Pango was not born as the strongest fiend celestial. His reputation was earned by killing. We have already learned our lesson. Why should we be afraid of him? The foolish sword sage said proudly. He was not the least afraid. An ancient fiend celestial mocked. If you're so arrogant, why don't you kill Pango? The foolish sword sage smiled. How will you thank me if I do? I will serve you as your servant. All right. The foolish sword sage stood up and left. No fiend celestial stopped him. After he disappeared, Red Fate sent a voice transmission to Hanju. Aren't you going to stop him? Hanju replied with a voice transmission, I'm not close to him. Then, why did he sit near you twice? That's just his wishful thinking. Hanju's reply had a double meaning. Red Fate glanced at him and didn't say anything else. The Grand Primordium Fiend Celestial said, in that case, we'll wait for Foolish Sword Sage to test Pango's current cultivation level. The chaotic Fiend Celestials had no objections. In any case, they hated the Foolish Sword Sage. The hall fell silent as the Fiend Celestials began to cultivate. Thousands of years later, they seemed to sense something and opened their eyes. Hanju was the same. A chaotic Fiend Celestial began to fight. Hanju was secretly curious. Could the newly nurtured Pango defeat the Foolish Sword Sage? According to the plan, the Foolish Sword Sage should lose. Otherwise, what would happen if Pango died as soon as he was born? Pango is still Pango. This aura is really unforgettable. Although I hate him, I have to say that the Great Tao of Strength is indeed powerful. Back then, the Great Tao of Heavenly Constellation was almost on par with him. Unfortunately, he still died in the hands of the Heaven-Opening Axe. If not for the Heaven-Opening Axe, the Chaotic Green Lotus, and the Chaotic Bead, how could Pango have killed through the 3,000 Fiend Celestials? Pango is barehanded in this life. Perhaps we have overestimated him. The Foolish Sword Sage has attacked. What a powerful sword chi! He was not a true chaotic fiend celestial. He couldn't sense the battle and could only sense the direction. He didn't know where the two of them were hiding. Why didn't you start a live stream? However, he couldn't say it lest he exposed that he was not a chaotic fiend celestial. Perhaps even the chaotic fiend celestials could see that there was a special connection, but he could not. This Pango can't even insta-kill the Foolish Sword Sage. He's nothing much. Hanju thought silently. He actually wanted to deal with Pango, but he knew that this Pango was not truly resurrected. The real Pango would still be around even if this one was destroyed. It was better to wait for Pango to kill a few more chaotic fiend celestials and reduce the number of opponents for him and his son. Then, he would attack and destroy Pango with the righteousness of the chaotic fiend celestials. He was not enemies with Pango. He had no choice. He had to protect himself. An hour later, the hall suddenly fell silent. Hanju understood that the battle was over. Why aren't they saying anything? Hanju's clone couldn't check his emails, so he could only be anxious. The Grand Primordium Fiend Celestial slowly said, the Foolish Sword Sage was defeated. Unfortunately, he still had a chance of winning. Who knew that Pango would have another supreme treasure? The Fiend Celestial spoke. What supreme treasure is that? It can actually reflect the Foolish Sword Sage's sword Tao. He's indeed powerful. Pangu was pierced by the foolish sword sage's sword Dao, but he can still kill him. The foolish sword sage is impressive. Although this fellow is arrogant, his potential is indeed great. Most importantly, he doesn't rely on his great Dao, but his sword Dao. His sword Dao is not bad. I wonder how strong that opponent is? Hanju was not surprised. The foolish sword sage was indeed not strong. He wondered if he was dead. Hanju passed this matter to his main body. In the Taoist temple, Hanju knew that the foolish sword god sage had lost, but he didn't open his eyes and continued cultivating. Hanju checked his emails and found emails about the foolish sword sage. Your good friend foolish sword sage was attacked by your enemy Pangu. Your good friend foolish sword sage was attacked by a mysterious force. His soul is in a daze. Your good friend foolish sword sage was attacked by your enemy Pangu. He was severely injured and his body was destroyed. Your good friend foolish sword sage was saved by a mysterious mighty figure. His soul escaped. A third party interfered? Hanju asked in his mind, who attacked the foolish sword sage when he fought Pangu, causing his soul to be in a daze? 500 billion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. A figure appeared in Hanju's mind and a notification appeared in front of him. Holy Mother of Order, Late Stage Great Tao Supreme Realm, Great Tao Divine Spirit. It was her. Hanju narrowed his eyes. He would never forget how the Holy Mother of Order broke the heavenly Tao the moment she attacked. He continued to ask, who saved the foolish sword sage? 900 billion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Laozi, perfected Great Tao Supreme Realm, transcendent Tao expert, Pangu's essence soul, personal disciple of the Tao ancestor, creator of the sword Tao, ancestor of the 100 schools, immeasurable emperor, ancestor of the human school, founder of the great Tao. Pangu's essence soul helped the foolish sword sage deal with Pangu? Interesting. In that case, the Tao sects and Pangu might not be on good terms. Then, let them fight. Hanju smiled. The thought of fighting Pangu made him inexplicably excited. He began the simulation trial and fought against 5,000 foolish sword sages. After repeating it hundreds of times, Hanju's excitement subsided. He couldn't defeat 5,000 foolish sword sages. The foolish sword sage couldn't defeat Pangu. Yeah. He deduced that he couldn't defeat Pangu, so he could not be rash. Hanju prepared to continue cultivating. His strength would definitely increase greatly again when he reached the perfected Great Tao Primordial Chaos Realm. At that time, Pangu would be nothing. One day, he would fight 10,000 Pangu in the simulation trial. At this moment, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du's voice floated into his ears. It was really time. Hanju stood up and came to the Universal Hall. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du immediately summoned the other sages. All the sages arrived in less than 5 minutes. South Extreme Heavenly Venerate, Sect Master Tianju, Emperor Shao, Heavenly Venerate Wufa, Chou Shilai, Feng Liang, Jin Shen, Pan Xian, Su Du Dao, Su Qi, Li Taigu, Primordial Chaos Buddha, Zhang Guxing, Long Hao, Ji Xianshen, Divine Might Buddha, and Yang Che all arrived. Including Heavenly Venerate Xian Du, the Heavenly Tao already had 21 Heavenly Tao sages. It was obvious how much stronger they were than before. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said, Pangu has revived. The hall was shocked. Who was Pangu? The founder of the Heavenly Tao. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was their ancestor. The sages were moved. They suddenly remembered that Hanju was also a chaotic fiend celestial. This matter had already spread in the chaos. Didn't that mean that Pango would also kill him? But that was Pango. Helping Hanju meant killing Pango. This was a betrayal. Hanyu's expression was also ugly. He did not expect to face such a thing as soon as he became a sage. He looked at his father and saw that his expression was normal and he didn't feel any pressure. That was giant god Pango. In the heavenly Tao, Pango was a creation god. The older the faith of all living beings, the stronger they became. How could Hanju be Pango's match? Pan Xin snorted. Although I'm Pango's descendant, I support fellow Taoist Han. Now, we're heavenly Tao sages. If anything happens to fellow Taoist Han, the heavenly Tao will definitely be devoured by the chaos. Do you think Pango will protect the heavenly Tao in the future? He sent you a dream? The sages were surprised. They didn't expect the first to support Hanju to be Pan Xin, a descendant of Pango. The sages had even stranger expressions. Chou, who had always been afraid of death and loved to scheme, also chose to support Hanju at this juncture and not go against Pango. Pan Xin and Chou had already spoken. The other sages naturally did not dare to remain silent. They all swore that they would protect the heavenly Tao and fight Pango. Hanju was not touched. Under such circumstances, only a fool would jump out to support Pango. It's better for us to explain clearly than to be used by the enemy. The current heavenly Tao travels the chaos. It's very difficult to directly control the hearts of all living beings. We can only use emotions and logic. The sages nodded and felt that it made sense. They were also cultivators. The more they suppressed some things and hid them, the more rebellious they became. Hanju said, "How can I be confident when facing Pango? All I can say is that I'll try my best." The old sages smiled, and the new sages had solemn expressions. Only those who were familiar with Hanju knew his personality. He would have run away long ago if he couldn't win. Hanju was still so calm. It was not because he was confident, but because he was extremely confident. Doing his best was already Hanju's greatest arrogance. The sages nodded. Then, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du began to talk about some development of the heavenly Tao. Hanju was bored and opened the emails to kill time. 2 hours later, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du talked about the Three Pure Sacred World. The Three Pure Sacred World has recruited cultivators of the Tao sect ever since its establishment. It can be considered to have regained the Tao ancestors' lineage and has the momentum to strengthen the Tao sect. Pango swept through the chaos, and the one who benefited the most was probably the Tao sect. The Three Pure Sacred World is not too far from the heavenly Tao. It's near the original deity realm of the ruins of End. They are all under the jurisdiction of the divine robed Taoist. The sages fell into deep thought. The strongest in the heavenly Tao was Hanju. With great sage Void Soul, there were only two great Tao sages. Laozi, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, the heavenly sect master, and their personal disciples were all great Tao sages. The sages did not know that Laozi was not a great Tao sage either, but an existence that surpassed one. Fang Liang said, "The chaos is vast. Even if the heavenly Tao and the Three Pure Sacred World develop extremely quickly, it still needs 100 million years to border us. Only then will there be a conflict of benefits. 100 million years is enough for the heavenly Tao to give birth to many mighty figures. No matter how strong the Three Pure Sacred World is, it's not formed by Pangu sacrificing his cultivation at his peak. The great creation of the heavenly Tao is the greatest in the chaos." Why was the providence of the heavenly Tao so strong? It always gave birth to mighty figures. Wasn't it because Pango was already the strongest in the chaos when he was created? The strongest existence in the chaos sacrificed himself to create a world. It was naturally the strongest in the chaos. Furthermore, it was the world with the oldest lifespan. It was just that it had been suppressed by the Tao ancestor for a long time. The sages smiled confidently. From today onwards, all sages must often open their Tao field and preach the Tao to all living beings. After the calamity ends, we will strive for the number of sages to reach 100. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du explained the next Heavenly Tao plan firmly. The sages were excited. This was a boat. When everyone advanced, the people in front would naturally benefit more. The more new sages there were, the more freedom sages there would be. The more freedom sages there were, the more great Tao sages there would be born. Yi. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du arranged some more things and then let the sages disperse. Hanju also stood up and left. In 2 steps, he vanished without a trace. The new sages secretly admired him. Hanju didn't frown even when facing a great enemy like Pango. Was this the divine might heavenly sage? In his eyes, what kind of existence was Pango? In the Grand Primordium domain, dozens of chaotic fiend celestials were still meditating in the hall. Hanju's clone was still there. The chaotic fiend celestials would begin to discuss every 1,000 years. Pango was frantically chasing after the wandering fiend celestials who had not entered the fiend celestial race and killed them all. Every time a fiend celestial died, their providence would transfer to Pango's body, causing his cultivation level to increase greatly. The battle of the fiend celestials before the creation of the world repeated. Hanju's clone was also here. Hearing the fiend celestials' emotions, he secretly despised them. He wanted to fight Pango. The Grand Primordium Fiend Celestial also had ambitions. He had always thought that he was not inferior to Pango, but due to heavenly providence, Pango had 3 birth supreme treasures and they were all supreme treasures that matched the great Tao of strength. He only had 1 supreme treasure at the beginning, so how could he defeat him? Hanju sent a voice transmission, "I'm hiding in the heavenly Tao. I'm also a descendant of Pango. He will only leave me behind." Red Fate was silent. That made sense. At this moment, a fiend celestial exclaimed, "The foolish sword sage isn't dead?" He actually went to challenge Pango again. The other fiend celestial spoke. Previously, he was not Pango's match. Now, Pango is several times stronger. How dare he? This fellow is impressive. No wonder he dared to challenge Pango back then. Unfortunately, Pango is too strong. Why do I feel that something is wrong? Pango seems to have someone helping him? The fiend celestials quickly saw the problem. Every time the foolish sword sage injured Pango, he would always recover. Most importantly, his blood essence would not decrease. Pango was only a strength fiend celestial and had not grasped any other great Tao. What right did he have to face existences of the same level without dying and maintaining his full strength? Hanju thought to himself, "You finally see through it." Pango had the support of the Holy Mother of Order. Hanju felt that there must be other transcendent existences behind him. There were also many chaotic fiend celestials in life. Several hours later, the foolish sword sage was defeated again, but this time, he relied on his own methods to escape. The Grand Primordium Fiend Celestial suddenly opened his eyes and said, "We can't wait for death. It's time for us to attack." He slowly stood up and said in a loud voice, "Everyone, follow me to fight Pango." With that said, all the Fiend Celestials stood up. They were just waiting for this sentence. "Those who only have their clones here, send your main bodies immediately. Kill Pango in one battle and let him know that his era has passed." The Grand Primordium Fiend Celestial scanned all the Fiend Celestials and said seriously. Hanju felt that this fellow was talking about him. In this palace, only a few chaotic Fiend Celestials had sent clones. The others were all their main bodies. They were also afraid that their main bodies would be killed by Pango if they stayed in their hometown. Just like that, the Fiend Celestials flew out of the palace under the Grand Primordium Fiend Celestials' lead. Hanju would take advantage of the situation to see Pango's strength. 10,000 years later, Hanju came to the second Dao field and released the Thunderbolt Fiend Celestial to let Moronchi receive him. Hanju looked at the second Dao field after the two of them left. All these years, the Fiend Celestials have been very impatient. They all feel Pango's threat, Liao said softly. She also felt it. Not only that, but Pango's name burst out from her bloodline and surged into her mind, letting her know the reason. Hanju asked, "Has it been soothed?" Liao nodded. "It's all thanks to Moronchi. I have to say that your grand disciple is indeed very talented." Hanju smiled. Of course. He valued Moronchi the most. Dao Comprehension Sword asked, "Master, will Pango find us?" Hanju said, "Yes, but he can't enter." Pango clearly had the ability to track the Fiend Celestials. He could sense its direction even if he couldn't spy on the second Dao field. This was a resonance between the Fiend Celestials. Dao Comprehension Sword was curious. She was already curious about the array formation of the Dao field, but she did not dare to ask. Liao smiled. "Don't worry. Even if the sky falls, Sept Master will hold it up. Pango is not our enemy. Our enemy is still in the future." Most of the Fiend Celestials had already entered the Sage Realm, but they had yet to reach the Freedom Realm. "That's right. You have to at least reach the Great Dao Sage Realm before you can serve me." Hanju smiled. Unfortunately, he didn't have a beard. Otherwise, it would be so cool to stroke it and smile. Of course, he could also grow a beard himself. He checked the emails. "Your son Han Tuo has stepped into the Freedom Primordial Chaos Realm. His cultivation has increased greatly. Your good friend Yi Tian has stepped into the Freedom Primordial Chaos Realm. His cultivation has increased greatly. Your disciple Dao Sovereign has entered the Chaotic Fiend Celestial's corpse. Your disciple Zhao Shenyuan has entered. As your good friend Divine Robe Daoist was cursed by a mysterious curse. Your enemy Seven Dao Sage has successfully revived. Your good friend Foolish Sword Sage has fused his Great Dao with the Sword Dao and successfully stepped into the Great Dao Supreme Realm." Was this considered rebuilding after destruction? Hanju couldn't help but sigh. This fellow was indeed powerful. Han Tuo and Yi Tian were also considered people with great providence. They had reached the Freedom Realm so quickly and were even stronger than his disciples. No wonder most cultivators risked their lives to seek opportunities. Hanju also noticed that Seven Dao Sage had revived. Seven Dao Sage was no longer anything in his eyes. If he knew his place, Hanju wouldn't care about him for the time being. But he would be insta-killed if he still dared to act recklessly. Unlike sages, Great Dao Sages were really difficult to nurture. Hanju continued reading the emails. Panga's appearance caused his friends to settle down. They rarely encountered a series of beatings. It had to be said that Panga was ferocious. His influence could be said to be the #1 in history. After reading the emails, Hanju switched his consciousness to his clone. At this moment, his clone was still following the Fiend Celestials through the chaos. The chaos was endless. It would take time to find Pango. Furthermore, this fellow seemed to be deliberately hiding. It might be related to the battle that had just ended. Foolish Sword Sage sent you a dream. Do you accept? Hanju's thoughts were interrupted by the notification. He hesitated for a moment and then asked in his mind, "Will it be dangerous for me to accept the Foolish Sword Sage's dream?" After all, this fellow was already the Great Dao Supreme. He was no longer the same as before. 400 billion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. No! Hanju chose to accept the dream. The dream was a primordial void, the place where the two of them fought. The foolish sword sage looked no different from before, but his entire body had already transformed. Countless sword shadows were interwoven in his eyes. Hanju said, "Then, you're really powerful." The foolish sword sage said, "Don't fight with Pango. He has a mighty figure behind him. It's impossible to defeat him. Pango's revival this time is only to restore the chaotic order. Perhaps it's for the primordial fiend celestial. After all, in the chaotic situation, it's easier for the primordial fiend celestial to grow." Hanju said helplessly, "I don't want to fight with him either, but can I make the decision?" "Perhaps, as long as it's the heavenly Tao's rules." "You survived? Pango won't find trouble with you anymore?" "Yes, I've already fought him twice. It can be considered as proving myself. He promised not to look for me again as long as I don't stop him." Hanju fell into deep thought. Pango was actually a pawn. The foolish sword sage said, "Divine might heavenly sage, I look forward to defeating you openly. Don't die." With that, the dream shattered. Hanju opened his eyes and asked in his mind, "I want to know who the greatest backer behind Pango's operation is." 1 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Chaos consciousness, cultivation unknown, chaotic deity, above the great Tao, rules and order, unspeakable name. Indeed, it's him. Hanju's heart sank. The strongest existence he knew. There were not many Providence labels, but each was extremely important. Hanju asked in his mind, "Will the chaotic consciousness attack me if I defeat Pango?" 1 quadrillion years of lifespan will be deducted. Do you want to continue? Continue. Not for the time being, but it will pay attention to you. Attention? Hanju suddenly thought of something and his expression became strange. I see. The chaotic consciousness guessed that there might be a primordial fiend celestial among the chaotic fiend celestials, so it was using Pango to test the waters? This fellow's goal was not to clean up the chaos but to find the primordial fiend celestial. Who else could defeat the strongest chaotic fiend celestial apart from the primordial fiend celestial? Hanju was in a dilemma. Didn't this mean that he couldn't attack Pango? Even with the protection of the Tao field, it would be troublesome once his identity was exposed. The entire chaos would target his Tao field and his disciples, friends, and descendants. Perhaps Hanju could move all of them into the Tao field, but wouldn't that be imprisoning them? Hanju took out the Book of Misfortune. I can only rely on you now. Hanju touched the Book of Misfortune and sighed. I didn't expect that I would still have to rely on you today. You're really my treasure.